Hey everybody, so today I'm gonna make seitan, and this is just a basic recipe. There's so many different ways you can alter the consistency, the flavor. You can add whatever spices, herb mix that you are inspired to do. There's so many different levels you can take this to. This has been my favorite. It's kind of like a chicken. So I'm gonna just talk a little bit about the seitan is the gluten in wheat. So when people have a wheat allergy, it is what they are allergic to. It's what causes the stretch. So when you're kneading bread, it's the elasticity that is in the proteins that are in the bread that are the elastic. When you work the bread, you create more gluten. So vital wheat gluten is just that. It's just the gluten extracted out. So you can make seitan by yourself using hard wheat traditionally. Knead it just like you're making bread, and then you rinse out the starch and the fiber from the bread, and you're left with the gluten. You're left with the ball of elastic, and then you flavor that. So it's a traditional form of protein, and now we have, we can just buy the protein, so we don't have to do as much work. So this is the vital wheat gluten that I choose. I've tried others. It's just finding what your preference is. So I'm going to talk a little bit quick about the broth. So the broth is what you're going to flavor it with. So I'm making like a chicken sort of seitan. So I'm going to use water with a veggie bouillon and flavor it with ginger and turmeric. I haven't tried the turmeric, the fresh turmeric in the broth, but I'm gonna do it today. So here's my ginger, probably about 2 inches. And again, it's flexible. You can put as much in as you want or as little in as you want. So this is ginger and turmeric, and then this is a bouillon, and then about 4 cups of water for how much I'm making. I'm making a half batch because I find that if I make a lot, then I eat a lot. And it's something that it's so special, it's so delicious that I tend to feel bogged down if I eat too much of it. So I really enjoy it in small doses and not every day. But you can, feel free to double this recipe and take your paths with other flavors. So 4 cups of water. I'm gonna add the ginger and the turmeric and the bouillon. And then I'm gonna cover this and bring this to a boil to get ready for the seitan that I'm gonna be making right now. So I'm gonna put this on the stove, turn this on. Traditional seitan is made with like a tamari or soy sauce flavored with ginger and kombu. The kombu is a seaweed, which actually I have, and I might put into mine today. Let me see if I have it open. Well, I don't have to take your time with it, but I'm gonna put that kombu in. It helps make things more digestible, and it also lends a lot of B vitamins and iodine into your diet. So now we're gonna make the seitan. So I have my bowl. I have 1 cup of vital wheat gluten. And to this, what I've found, if I don't use beans or tomato paste, I find that the seitan gets very chewy. So I was trying to work out how to make it not so chewy, not so much work to eat. And what I found is a mix of olive oil and nutritional yeast. And I've made it with smashed beans. I've made it with squash puree. And this is my favorite for this kind of chicken style. So to that, I'm gonna add generous 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And this is nutritional yeast powder. You can use the flakes, no worries. I'm gonna add salt. And again, you want this to be flavored, and then it will also take on the flavoring of the broth. So you want this to be salty, but other ways that you can use like a crazy mixed up salt. You can add a garlic salt, which I'm gonna add, which just kind of adds another dimension of saltiness. Onion powder, so probably about a good healthy 2 teaspoons onion powder. And then chipotle powder, because I like it a little spicy. I always like it spicy. So I'll add a good teaspoon of chipotle. And then also some pepper. And again, feel free to make more or less spice happen. You can add fresh herbs, dried herbs, all that. And so now I'm gonna mix this just with my fingers so that all of this is sort of incorporated and I don't have clumps of things, because as soon as I add moisture to this, it's gonna start to ball up quick. So I'm not gonna add all the water at once. I also wanna add my olive oil. So this is about 2 healthy tablespoons of olive oil, which is considered the liquid. So anytime you add to something, like if you added tomato paste, or if you added potato, or if you added sweet potato to this, it's considered the liquid. So you're gonna wanna mix this in and just get this kind of worked in, then start to add your water. And I'm just gonna use my hands to sort of bring this together. And it's gonna come together fast. And so if I was to pour all this water in at once, it would almost become spongy, and you can't get it back. You can't add more dry to try to get it back. You're creating it as you go. So I'm just gonna keep adding and picking up the dry. And now I'm starting to feel it come together. And so it's wet enough that I can pick up the dry, but it's not too wet that it's just kind of absorbing the dry. And then from here, I'm just gonna start to knead. So I have about 2 minutes of kneading. And again, the kneading is gonna develop the gluten, which is gonna develop the chew, which is developing that sort of meat toothiness, that satisfying toothiness. So I have a little bit of stuff that's kind of lingering around, so I can add just a little tiny bit. Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit of oil instead, because I don't need that much. And I'm just gonna pull all that together and knead. So in the beginning when I was making this, now I can sort of just go. But in the beginning, I would taste the dough for saltiness or flavor. And so let's say it's hard to season this after all of these ingredients are mixed. So kneading, you're just gonna use the heel of your hand and pull it back and take up all the stuff in the bowl. So it starts to get, right? It's really, if you can see that, it's got like those fibers, those kind of elastic. And I'm just gonna keep working it. I also found that if you boil this as a ball, you run the risk of the center being, doesn't have that kind of fibrous pull. It's almost dense and hard. So I will take this, break this into sort of balls, then drop them in the broth. And you can feel this come together and have this elastic pull to it. So you see it's coming together. Things aren't falling out of it anymore. It's all kind of in there and incorporated. And so then from here, I'll rip off and then individually work this into a ball. So I'm basically tucking all of these loose things in, up and in. So I'm rounding it in, and I'm working this individually. So if you have pieces that kind of fall out, it's okay, but then you run the risk of it breaking off in the broth. So there's one, and I'm just gonna go through this. And these will swell in the broth also. And I'm just working it in. Right? So I'm tucking it back up and under. And then I'm gonna poke all of these in. There's another. So this will make like 4. Typical, because it's just me, you would double this. Like if you had other people to feed, you would double this. And then you can store it in the broth in a large container, like cool it on the counter, store it in the broth in a large container in your fridge. And so as you need it, as you want it, you pull out a ball, slice it. So my favorite right now is taking a ball that's been cooled, slicing it pretty thin, and then pan frying it in garlic and olive oil. And that it's just, whether it's hot or cold, it's just so satisfying. And then my last one. And then these will cook in the broth for 30 minutes minimum. So if the broth is up to boil, you'll just turn it down and simmer it in the broth. So you can vary the flavor of the broth. You can add mushrooms. You can add whatever, like whatever your heart desires into this. Whatever, and think about the flavors of the foods that you're trying to maybe mimic, or the things that you're craving, or how you want to use it. So this would be a seitan that I would use for the seitan paprikash, or pan-fried sliced over salad, right? Like as opposed to like a chicken. So when I made one the other day, I made it with, I put tomato paste in it. So it had like a sort of red hue to it. It was almost like pan-fried steak. It was pretty tasty. Okay, so now let me check my broth. My broth is good. I'm gonna drop these in. And again, I'm just ensuring that there's not too much loose ends. So I'm just gonna keep working them up and under. Let me show you. So I've got my little dough balls. I'm gonna put them in. I'm gonna set my timer for 30 minutes. And then I will post what it looks like after. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Send me any messages or emails that you need to get clarification, and I look forward to seeing you on the flip side. Peace out.